Today, we are going to be talking about bedtime because I know this is such a hot topic for so many of you, and I've gotten a ton of questions about this lately. And so I want to give you some really great and useful bedtime hacks. And I want to start by talking about the importance of doing whatever it takes so that the most number of people get the most hours of sleep. So this might mean that one adult sleeps in a kid's bedroom with the kid. And it might mean, so it might mean that if there are two parents in the household that you split up for the night or for a few nights. It might mean that two kids who get along really well share a bedroom, and maybe it means splitting them up so that they're not sharing a bedroom. If you live in a home where they kind of have to share a bedroom, maybe there's another space in the house where one of them can sleep. Maybe it means that the baby starts out in your bedroom and then you move them to their own room after they've fallen asleep. You know your family best and your children's needs best. So the first step is just figuring out, what does this little person need? What do each of these little people need so that they can get the most amount of sleep and so that we can get the most amount of sleep? Because especially in the early years, sleep is so important, and probably no one's getting enough of it. Probably the adults are not getting enough of it. Hopefully the kids are, but we want to do whatever we can to maximize everyone's sleep. So I know that sometimes, for example, parents are hesitant to lay down with their kids for the whole night because they worry that their child won't be able to put themselves to sleep in the future, or are they going to be sleeping in my bed forever? And I want to remind you and reassure you that no, indeed, your child will not be still sleeping in your bed at age 15. They're going to go off to college when they get older, and they'll be able to sleep on their own. And part of course, the intention of helping them to learn to put themselves to sleep in whatever way is needed is so that they can put themselves to sleep in the future, so that they don't need to rely on you. But if for right now, if they're 2, if they're 3, if however old they are, even if they're 7, if they need you to lay down with them and that feels the best to them and it feels like something you can bring, like if it feels like you can do it and stay regulated, go ahead and lay down with them. If you feel like laying down with them fills you with rage for some reason, if that just doesn't feel like something comfortable to you, you have to set a boundary and help them get to sleep in other ways. So step 1 is figuring out what each of your little people needs to get to sleep, and then finding ways to maximize that as best you can so that everyone gets the most amount of sleep. So step 1 is just figuring that out and adjusting things accordingly. Bedtime routines, of course, are super important, and I'm sure you've read the recommendations of the experts, and I'm no sleep expert, but everyone says, to be as consistent as possible, that you want to create a bedtime environment so that you're starting to lower the lights and quiet things down and do quiet activities. We're not, doing crazy jumping all over the place at bedtime. We're not watching screens at bedtime. We really want to be focused on soothing, calming, quieting activities, reading, looking at books together, maybe listening to some soft music, and really creating intentionally an environment that is conducive to kind of winding down. Now, for some of you, this might look like everybody's in the same room doing story time together. For some of you, this might look like an older child takes a book into their room and has their own quiet time while you put a younger child to bed. Again, this is getting back to the unique makeup of your own family and what everyone's unique needs are. So creating an environment where things are slowing down about at least a half an hour before you expect to turn out the lights. But ideally like an hour before you're going to turn out the lights, you want to start slowing things down, turn on night lights, turn the lights down low, start to speak in a softer voice, start to be aware of your own energy and see if you can really bring a calmer, more mindful energy to the situation, because that's going to help everybody It's going to help bring everybody down. If you calm yourself and bring your own energy down and quiet your voice and get slow, this will help everyone to settle down and soothe and get ready for bedtime. And that becomes a trigger, like it becomes a mental trigger for them, that when you lower the lights and you start to speak more softly and you get out the books, this becomes what reminds them in an unconscious way, and not even a conscious way, but in an unconscious way, it lets their nervous system know now it's time to sleep. So being consistent with those things, doing, even if you have some little bedtime rituals, I mean, of course, getting in pajamas, putting, brushing your teeth, all of these things that are sort of the task related things, but maybe you have a little candle that you light that you blow out at, when you tuck them in, or maybe you have essential oils that you diffuse, that you have your child go and press the button and turn on the diffuser. Like, kids really love routines and rituals, and if you can add something to the bedtime routine that doesn't feel like a chore to them, like brushing teeth is challenging, and for some kids it's really a task, but if you can add some snuggly, gentle, fun, special things to the bedtime routine, even if you just pick one thing. Maybe it's that they tuck their teddy bear into the teddy bear bed, or they, turn on a special night light. Find one thing that's their job that they can add to the bedtime routine that lets their nervous system know now it's time to go to bed. So staying consistent with those routines is really helpful. Now, there is an exception here, which is that sometimes you have a bedtime routine that's consistent, but it's not working. So it's not a good bedtime routine because it's not working for you. So it's like, well, we always do it in this order, and it's a total disaster, right? It's not working. Nobody's it's taking 2 hours to get everybody to bed. That lets you know that your bedtime routine isn't working. So that's a great time to look at, what could we do to shake things up? Like maybe it's that the older kid needs even more, one-on-one time after the littler kids are in bed. Or maybe it's that the older kid, maybe the new thing is like the older kid reads to the younger kid, and that's what helps things to flow better. Maybe it's that everyone puts on their pajamas and then you put them in a stroller and go for a walk around the block outside before you get in bed, because fresh air is really great for, it can be energizing, but it also is really great to just clear the airways and spit and be really soothing. So maybe getting a little fresh air before bedtime would be something that could shake things up. And I don't mean like shake up the routine all the time. I just mean if your routine is not working, find a different routine that can work better. I had a client whose child did not want to put on pajamas. And so I said, does she have to wear pajamas to bed? Like maybe that's just not a thing in your household. Like maybe it's fine. My son doesn't wear pajamas to bed. He wears his clothes. He puts on clean clothes at bedtime and wears his clothes to bed because he doesn't want to have to get dressed he doesn't want to have to deal with getting dressed in the morning. It's fine by me. I mean, if it's something that, irritates you or it doesn't feel okay, like obviously don't do that, but look at the things that aren't working and ask yourself, what am I willing to do differently? What kind of creative way could I shake up this situation so that it does work better? So routines are important, consistency, getting the environment ready for bedtime, all very important. But if your routine is not working, excuse me, look at ways that you could shake things up and do something differently, and maybe ask your child. Maybe you have a little family meeting and you say, I've noticed that bedtime is really long and it takes forever, and it's really frustrating for me that I can't get you guys to go to bed when in a timely fashion. What do you think we could do to make bedtime go smoother? And you will be surprised the brilliant ideas that they come up with, and it will give you a clue as to why they're dragging their feet, if that's the issue. If bedtime's taking a long time and you don't really know why, what is it that they're needing, they might say like, well, I always feel like I'm not done playing and I really need a little bit more of a heads up. Great, that's helpful information, right? Your child might feel like you're pulling them away from playing and they didn't know it was going to be bedtime, and so then they're having trouble transitioning, and so maybe the information they're giving you is like, I just need a little bit more of a heads up. That's super helpful. Or they might say like, I really want extra snuggle time with you at night. And so you figure that out. So it's getting at each child's individual needs, as I talked about earlier. When you just ask them, you just make the observation, I notice this. Again, this is going to work if your kids are old enough to verbalize what's going on for them. If they're 2 or 3, they may or may not be able to tell you what they need. But especially when you have multiple children, just putting it out there and saying, I've noticed this just isn't working. What could we do to make things go more smoothly? And see what they come up with. It's almost always very illuminating to just ask for their ideas. And remember that this is temporary, right? Like, you're in a particular stage of development with your family right now, and it might not be working, and you're going to find ways to tweak the bedtime routine so that it does work. And also know that, if you have to sleep in your toddler's bed with them for a few months, it's temporary. And ask yourself what you're willing to do and what you're able to do for a short period of time, just to create that, to achieve that goal of everyone getting as much sleep as possible. Now, my final bedtime hack for you is going back to the whole idea of self-care. And I know this is sort of a tired term at this point, but it's really important to prepare yourself for bedtime. Their bedtime, the kids' bedtime. It's important that you prepare yourself, because bedtime happens every day, right? And it's often a stressful time for parents. It's often a time that we dread, when in fact we want it to be a time that we look forward to, right? Because it's a time when we get to hear about their day. Sometimes that's like when kids totally unload and tell you stuff they wouldn't tell you during the day. It's when you get like those nice snuggles, you get just the cutest, sweetest connection time with your kids is often at bedtime. But if you're understandably frazzled and done and just over it and ready to be, to have some grown-up time, that's going to come into play and make bedtime more challenging. So my suggestion is that if you can get even 1 minute, ideally 5 minutes, but if you can even get 1 minute of alone time before you have to start the bedtime routine, if you have to go in the bathroom and just shut the door, whatever you can do to get a mini break before bedtime so that you can reset. So if that's 1 minute of deep breathing, 1 minute of screaming into your pillow, if that's what you need, if you can step outside, you might not be able to take a walk around the block, but if you could just step outside and breathe the fresh air. And that can become part of the bedtime routine. Oh, this is the part where Dad goes outside and takes some deep breaths on the porch. This is the part where Mom goes in her room and shuts the door for 1 minute. Make that part of the bedtime routine, and that just communicates to them, like, I got needs too, and I'm going to meet my needs. And that's an important message for them to see, that you're going to meet your own needs. And then I'm ready, then you can come to bedtime ready for the game, ready for whatever it's going to take. So working in a little micro break before bedtime is really important, and that can take many forms. And then the other thing that is really helpful in preparation for bedtime is, and this is like, you do this in advance, like on your own time, is to imagine how you want it to go, right? We tend to approach these parenting moments that we dread with all kinds of imagery of how we expect it to go poorly, because last night it went poorly and the night before it went poorly. But then we're just looking for things to go badly again, right? We tend to look for what we already expect to see. And so if you can take a moment, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, when the kids are taking a nap, and just write down your ideal bedtime. I did this with a client recently, and it was so helpful to just get a picture in your mind of how the kids will read quietly with you, and then this one will go to sleep and you'll have a little extra snuggle time with this one. Like, imagining your ideal bedtime scenario is so powerful, because then you're telling your mind, you're telling your unconscious mind to look for that. You're saying, this is what I want, now go look for it, right? Your unconscious mind is going to look for what you're thinking about. So if you can be thinking about how you want it to go, and just bring those warm feelings of the best bedtime, the most smooth, quick, snuggly, quiet bedtime that you can imagine, if you're bringing those thoughts to bedtime, you're much more likely to get that outcome. Now, is it going to go perfectly? Of course not, right? Children are messy, humans are messy, bedtime is messy. But if you can spend a little time just in that vision of how you wish it would go, how you want things to go, I guarantee you will see more of the behaviors that you want to see. You'll bring more of that energy from yourself to the bedtime situation, and everything will just flow a little more smoothly, right? This is a long game, right? It's incremental change over time. So these are all just small things you can do. It doesn't mean that envisioning your ideal bedtime is going to transform everything. It just means you're moving a little bit closer and closer to how you want things to go and bringing the kind of energy and presence that you want to bring to bedtime. So this is the kind of thing I work on with my one-on-one clients, is unpacking some of the specifics of what is it that your child needs and how can you bring the best version of yourself to a scenario like bedtime. So if you're curious about one-on-one coaching, please hit me up in an email, hello@katherineindy.com. I would love to talk with you if you're feeling like you need a little additional support. And in the meantime, I hope you have a wonderful week, and I'll see you next time.